Before your next bite of breakfast, just pause for 1 second. Think about how your body felt after your last meal, that slight drop in energy that hits around mid-morning, that quiet hunger creeping back in even though you ate just a couple of hours ago, that little pull towards something sweet, a biscuit, a cup of tea with sugar, anything to get you going again. Most people feel this and think nothing of it. They assume it is just normal. They push through it, grab a snack, and move on. But what if I told you that feeling is actually a signal? A very specific signal that your blood sugar is already rising and falling in a way it should not be. And the part that surprises most people is that signal is almost always triggered by a breakfast they fully believe is healthy, the one sitting on their table right now. Stay with me because in the next several minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why this is happening, what your breakfast is actually doing inside your body, and the one simple food that most people have been avoiding for entirely the wrong reasons. This changes things. And I say that after more than 20 years of working in metabolic health. My name is Dr. Megan Foster. I have spent the better part of 2 decades working with patients who are genuinely confused about why their blood sugar stays unstable despite doing everything they believe is right. They are cutting sugar. They are eating what looks like a healthy breakfast. They are following advice they have heard for years, and still their numbers stay uneven. Their energy dips, their hunger returns too quickly after eating, and almost every single time, the root of the problem is not what they are eating for lunch or dinner. It is what they are eating first thing in the morning. Because here's the truth, that most mainstream nutrition advice still gets wrong. The biggest driver of unstable blood sugar in everyday people is not dessert. It is not snacking, and it is not eating late at night. It is a high-carbohydrate breakfast that enters your bloodstream too fast, spikes your blood sugar, triggers a sharp insulin response, and then drops you right back down within an hour or two. And then the whole cycle starts over again. Oats, fruit juice, brown bread, granola, low-fat yogurt with added fruit. These are the foods that fill the shelves of every health food section. These are the foods recommended by well-meaning articles and morning television segments. And in many cases, especially for people dealing with blood sugar sensitivity or early metabolic issues, these foods are making the problem worse every single morning. Now, I want to be careful here because I am not saying these foods are harmful for everyone in every situation. What I am saying is that starting your day with fast-digesting carbohydrates, especially without enough protein to balance them, is one of the most common and least talked about drivers of blood sugar instability in people who are genuinely trying to eat well. And the fix is simpler than you might think. It does not involve expensive supplements. It does not require a complicated meal plan. In most cases, it involves a food that has been sitting in your kitchen all along. But before I get to that, I want you to really understand what is happening mechanically inside your body. Because once you see this clearly, everything else makes sense. And when you understand why something works, you are far more likely to actually follow through with it. Think about your bloodstream like a highway. On a normal day, traffic moves steadily. Cars enter at a controlled rate. They travel at a reasonable pace. Everything flows smoothly. Now, imagine someone opens a gate and releases 500 cars onto that highway all at the same time. No spacing, no traffic lights, just a sudden flood of vehicles hitting the road at once. That is what happens to your blood sugar when you eat fast, digesting carbohydrates on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. Glucose from those carbohydrates enters your blood rapidly. Your body scrambles to deal with the sudden surge. Insulin spikes sharply to move that glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells. And then when the job is done, blood sugar drops. Sometimes it drops quite sharply. That sharp drop is what you feel as the mid-morning crash. That is the tiredness, the foggy thinking, the hunger returning too soon, the craving for something sweet or something quick to get you back up again. Now imagine a different version of that same highway, same number of cars, but this time there are traffic lights installed at regular intervals. Cars still move. Traffic still flows, but it is controlled, steady, manageable. No sudden flood, no overwhelm. That is what protein does in a meal. It slows the rate at which glucose from carbohydrates enters your bloodstream. It installs those traffic lights. And eggs, specifically, are one of the most effective and accessible ways to do that at breakfast. This is not a theory I invented. This is established nutritional science. Clinical studies have consistently shown that meals with higher protein content, especially from whole food sources like eggs, led to lower blood sugar spikes after eating, a gentler insulin response, and improved energy stability throughout the day. When researchers compared groups eating high-protein breakfast against groups eating high-carbohydrate breakfast with the same total calorie count, The protein groups had measurably better glucose control across the entire day, same calories, completely different outcome inside the body. Now, I want to spend a moment on something that most people never stop to consider, which is the specific hormonal environment your body is in when you wake up in the morning. Because morning is not just any meal window, it is actually a unique and somewhat vulnerable time for blood sugar management. When you first wake up, your body is in a state where it has not been fed for several hours. Your liver has been slowly releasing stored glucose overnight to keep your brain and organs functioning during sleep. And in the early morning hours, your body releases a natural wave of cortisol, which is your primary waking hormone. Cortisol helps you feel alert and ready to move. But cortisol also raises blood sugar slightly as part of that wake-up process. This is sometimes called the dawn effect. What this means is that by the time you sit down to eat breakfast, your blood sugar is already primed. It is already slightly elevated compared to where it was in the middle of the night. So when you then eat a high-carbohydrate breakfast on top of that cortisol-driven morning rise, the combined effect is a sharper spike than you would get at any other point in the day from the same food. The morning is actually the time when your body is most sensitive to carbohydrate intake. Eating a high-carbohydrate breakfast is essentially the worst time to do it from a blood sugar perspective. This also helps explain why so many people who are not eating particularly badly overall still struggle with their blood sugar numbers. It is not their whole diet that is the problem. It is specifically the morning routine. The first meal of the day is setting a tone that the rest of the day has to recover from. Now, let me walk you through how to actually use eggs to change that pattern. Starting with the basics and building up to the most effective approach. Eggs prepared simply have essentially zero impact on your blood sugar. They do not raise it. They do not cause a spike. Their natural composition is mostly protein and fat, which means they digest slowly. They do not trigger the rapid insulin response that carbohydrates do, and they remain in your stomach longer, which is what creates the feeling of being genuinely full rather than just temporarily not hungry. 2 eggs boiled or lightly scrambled without excessive oil eaten in the morning gives your body a stable starting point. Not a spike, not a crash, just a steady base your body can work with comfortably through the morning. Now, here's a mistake I see very often with people who do eat eggs for breakfast. They add toast alongside, or they drink a glass of orange juice with it, or they have a bowl of cereal first and then the eggs. By doing that, they are undermining one of the main benefits of the eggs. The fast-digesting carbohydrates in the toast or juice still hit your bloodstream quickly. The eggs help somewhat, but when carbohydrates come first, or in a large quantity alongside, the blood sugar spike still happens. The sequence and the balance of the meal matter enormously, and I will come back to that in detail shortly. Also worth noting is that frying eggs repeatedly in a large amount of oil or butter adds unnecessary heaviness to what is otherwise a metabolically clean food. Light cooking methods preserve the protein quality and keep the meal clean. Boiled, poached, or lightly scrambled with a very small amount of oil is the approach that works best over time. There is something else about eggs worth knowing that goes beyond blood sugar, and it surprises a lot of people when I mention it. Eggs are one of the richest dietary sources of a nutrient called choline. Most people have never heard of it, but the research behind choline is quite compelling. Choline is what your brain uses to produce a chemical called acetylcholine, which is heavily involved in memory, focus, and the ability to think clearly and stay mentally sharp throughout the day. A single egg contains roughly 150 milligrams of choline. 2 eggs gets you close to the daily amount that most adults need. And the reason this matters specifically at breakfast is that your brain is in a slightly depleted state first thing in the morning after several hours of fasting. It is working immediately when you wake up, managing attention, starting the day processing information. What you feed it in that first hour either supports that function or competes with it. A carbohydrate-heavy breakfast that sends blood sugar spiking and crashing is not giving the brain what it needs. Eggs, by providing stable fuel, and choline at the same time, are doing something quite different. This is very likely one of the reasons many people report feeling noticeably sharper and more focused on mornings when they eat eggs compared to mornings when they eat primarily carbohydrates. It is not a coincidence. It is the brain receiving 2 things it genuinely needs at the time. It needs them most. Now let us look at what happens when you combine eggs with fiber, because this is where things start getting noticeably more effective. Fiber is something that nutritional research keeps returning to, and for very good reason. When you eat fiber alongside protein, the combined effect on blood sugar is even stronger. Fiber physically slows the movement of food through your digestive system. It creates a kind of buffer that limits how fast glucose can enter your blood from the foods around it. So when you already have protein from the eggs slowing things down and you add fiber from vegetables, you are layering two separate control mechanisms on top of each other. The combination of eggs with vegetables like spinach, tomatoes, bell peppers, or carrot is not just a healthy choice in a general sense. It is specifically effective at reducing the blood sugar response after breakfast. Research examining fiber intake and post-meal glucose consistently finds that higher fiber meals produce significantly lower spikes compared to the same calorie meals without fiber. The difference is not small. It is meaningful and consistent. Think of it. The protein from the eggs is the traffic light. The fiber from the vegetables is an additional layer of management that controls flow from multiple points. Together, they create a far smoother post-meal blood sugar curve than either one alone. The common mistake with this version is swapping the vegetables for bread. People feel like they are adding something to their breakfast by adding toast, but they are actually undercutting the stabilizing effect they are trying to create. Bread, even whole grain, still digests faster than vegetables and still contributes to blood sugar rise. If stability is your goal, the vegetables are the addition to make. And this does not have to be complicated. Scrambled eggs with a handful of spinach and a few sliced tomatoes takes about 5 minutes. Nothing elaborate, nothing expensive, just effective. Now let us move to the most powerful version of this approach. This is where the real visible difference shows up in how people feel throughout the day. And it is the combination that I see producing the clearest results with patients over time. The most effective breakfast for blood sugar control is eggs paired with a healthy fat source eaten in the right sequence within the meal, with carbohydrates positioned at the end rather than the beginning. Here is why this works so well. Healthy fats like those found in avocado slow gastric emptying. That is simply the rate at which food leaves your stomach and begins to be absorbed. When that rate slows down, everything slows down with it. Your blood sugar rises gradually instead of rapidly. Your insulin response is gentler and more controlled. Your energy stays more consistent through the morning. And because fat is genuinely filling, you are far less likely to be reaching for a snack before lunch. When you combine eggs with avocado, you are stacking 3 separate blood sugar stabilizing effects at once. The protein effect from the eggs, the fiber effect from the avocado and any vegetables, and the fat slowing the rate of the whole digestive process. All 3 working together in the same meal. People who follow this approach consistently, meaning most mornings rather than occasionally, begin to notice gradual improvement in their fasting blood sugar readings over the eggs and avocado on the side afterward. The blood sugar spike has already begun. At that point, the eggs and avocado are still helping, but they cannot prevent the initial spike the way they's. Practical application looks like this: 2 eggs scrambled or poached, a handful of spinach or sliced,